Super. Also jetzt geht's weiter, meine Damen und Herren, meine Freaks and Geeks, meine Queers und Straights. Unsere nächste Gästin hat die allererste Geschichte von Dance of Dragons erklärt auf der Schirm, als sie Sherin Baratheon war. Sie hat das, was ist jetzt House of the Dragon, erklärt zu Davos Seaworth. Spoiler, kurz vor sie gestorben ist. Aber was gut ist, sie ist ziemlich gut erholt von ihrer Grayscale-Erkrankung. Sieht viel besser aus jetzt gerade. Meine Damen und Herren, Ms. Kerry Ingram. Good morning, young lady.
We've got two mics this time.
Yes, we've got two today. Much better.
Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm very well. My voice is fleeting.
Sounds like you were at the party last night. Is that what you're telling me?
Maybe. And you were very well behaved, and I can see that, fresh and ready to go.
I was tucked up in bed with room service by 10 p.m.
Brilliant. Brilliant. That is smart. So how's it doing so far? How are you feeling about the event and the location and everything?
Do you know what? I've had such a lovely time. I prefer the cons where it's in somewhere like this with the castle. It's a bit more interactive, a bit smaller.
I don't know if it needs to be closer
smaller.
or farther. I don't know. Unser Ton ist ein bisschen Feedback. Können wir das ein bisschen besser machen?
Is it because we're standing too close? Are we sitting too close?
Yeah, are we sitting too close? Do we need to get farther away?
Is that better? Testing. Yeah,
Check.
There we go.
I think that's better. I think we're too close to the monitors. So, sorry, continue.
It's been really, really lovely. I'm excited to try out the archery later as well. I can't join the competition, unfortunately, because I have to go and get my flight at that time. But I am going to go and have a go.
Yes.
Which is going to be very fun. And have a little wander around the stalls. There's some wicked stalls as well. Some really interesting ones. It's not just the regular ones. You've got some really interesting stuff there as well. So actually, I've really enjoyed myself. It's a shame I had to leave so early, but, flights.
So we talked a little bit yesterday about your first theater experience. All of a sudden, surprisingly, the lead role in a musical, and then, of course, shortly thereafter, you auditioned for Game of Thrones. Walk us through your audition for Game of Thrones.
So actually, it was the day after. So obviously, I did Matilda. We had been to the Olivier Awards the night before, which is where we'd won the Olivier Award.
That's the one with the tattoo, yes.
So at the age of 12, we were walking through the streets of London at 2 o'clock that morning. Obviously, I was 12, so it wasn't, on a drunken night out or anything like that. But, it was a very, very late night. We probably got home probably about 3 o'clock in the morning, I would say, something like that. My audition was at 11 a.m. So I walked in very tired from the night before, but maybe that probably is what made me look a bit more like the character, who knows, being locked away and never seen the sun, and, so maybe that helped a little bit, but yeah, so... I just walked in, I read it a couple of times, and I think because the character back then, they didn't know how big that character was going to be. Originally, she was only meant to come in to teach Davos how to read, because that was a really important part of the story. But I think that, and in that case, I only actually had that one audition. That was it, because in season 3, she only had 2 or 3 scenes, and that was what the extent of the character was. And I think that after season 3, when they saw how much people liked the character, that's when they brought it back, and then that's when it turned into the character that it became. So actually, I only had that one audition because they obviously weren't expecting it to be anything bigger, so I don't think they felt they needed to see any more than what they had seen. So I'm very lucky in that sense, is that obviously it was just, they just liked me, and I think people just liked the character, and that's why it became, a lot bigger than it was. But that was it. It was just, I just walked in and read it a couple of times, and the rest is history.
Compare for me working on a big project like Game of Thrones and Free Reign. Mm-hmm.
Very different. Very different. I loved both of them for completely different reasons, and I've always said that, getting that sort of variety I've been very lucky. A lot of people do have the issue of being sort of typecast, or they end up doing the same role over and over and over again, or similar things. I'm quite lucky to have had quite a range, throughout my career, and it's been absolutely incredible. I think what I liked about Free Reign more than Game of Thrones is that it was my first role as a lead. So I was there every single day. I got to input on my character. I got to rewrite some of the script to make it feel like how I knew the character. Whereas Game of Thrones was very strict because of how obviously big the production was and things like that. So, I think the difference between them is that with Free Reign, it was a bit more relaxed because it was a kids show, and we'd been there for so long, and they let us sort of have our freedom with it. But obviously, Game of Thrones was set on a book, which had very set characters. There wasn't really too much that you could do with it. So that's what I really liked about the difference between the two is, getting to sort of see that comedy side of me that I could, explore and get to know and stuff like that. But then with Game of Thrones, it was very, got to sink your teeth into it, got to, work with all these incredible people and, see all of these sets and. They're very, very different and absolutely both wonderful in their own ways.
It's amusing that you explain it like that, because for me, as a word nerd, it's just a very big coincidence that you had working on Free Reign.
I know, literally, we had free reign to do Free Reign. I mean, it was originally called Hat Hair. It was Hat Hair up until it was released. So on all of our old scripts, it's called Hat Hair. But I think I don't know why they changed it, but they changed it to Free Reign. And yeah, the name stuck, and I think the name's perfect for it, really. Are
you the kind of person that keeps your scripts?
I do. Not all of them, of course. But, I've definitely got some... scripts, but it's more the sides I think I have, which they normally come in a little tiny... sheet of paper, and they've got your call sheet at the front with your timings and your makeup stuff and all of that. I probably have more of those than I do of the big, thick scripts, because if I kept... With Free Reign, they used to change the script, obviously all the time, and you would get amendments. And, if you kept every single script, you'd have a whole, room full of just papers and papers and papers. So I kind of keep here and there. It's more the first episodes of things. And then pretty much after that, I kind of shred other ones because you can't really get rid of them, and you have to shred them. But yeah, no, I keep the memorable ones, but I don't keep everything as a whole, because otherwise it's just clutters after a while.
Also wie immer, wenn ihr habt irgendwelche Fragen, Janina ist da. Oh, da ist schon eins. Aria has a question.
Hi. My question is, what was your reaction to Shireen's death?
Oh, sorry, what was that?
What was your reaction to Shireen's death?
So, to be honest, at first I was shocked, but actually then I was quite happy about it, because I had seen quite a lot of characters of similar characters kind of just not disappear, but just kind of slowly move out of the show until they weren't really in it anymore. And my character was never going to be the main event of the show. So actually, when I saw that, I thought, what, that's a really, really cool way to disappear. And it wasn't just like mention of, oh, by the way, she died. It was I got to do this incredible scene and stuff like that. So actually, I was quite excited, because from a Game of Thrones perspective, it was a pretty cool way to go out. So I was quite happy with the way that it turned out. I know you guys probably weren't, but as far as Game of Thrones goes, I think it was a pretty cool death, and it was a pretty cool way to finish my time on the show.
That's good. What did you think? How were you affected by Shireen's death?
I think I was pretty shocked, but in Game of Thrones you never know who's gonna die.
That's why people like it.
Yeah.
It's the shock factor.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Sure,
absolutely.
Go ahead.
Okay. I wonder, how much did your makeup take over time?
So when we first did the trials, it took about 5 hours, because we were still trying to figure out what they wanted it to look like. So they didn't know whether they wanted it more, indented, or whether they wanted it sort of maybe flakier. They weren't too sure how they wanted it to look. So we had quite a few different trials of it. But in the end, they decided that they wanted to go with the sort of more indented look, to make it look like, obviously, where she'd grown up, it kind of, sunk into with her
cracked
face.
mud, kind of.
Yeah, basically. So it took probably, I'd say, around 3 hours. But then by the end of season 5, I'd actually learned how to do some of it myself. So actually, I used to give my makeup artist was called Katie, lovely human being. Every morning we would have, the tunes playing, and I'd learn how to do some of the touch-ups and stuff myself. So she would put the prosthetic on, and then I would help with a bit of the painting, and we kind of got it down to about just over 2 hours. or something like that. But then it was also an hour and a half to take it off. That was the worst part. Getting it put on wasn't the worst part. It was taking it off. That was the horrible part, because at the end of the day, all you want to do is go home and eat. So, and if you take it off too quickly, you could cause damage to your skin. So you had to take it off very slowly, but I was very impatient, so she would go from one side and I would take it off from the other side, and we would slowly just sort of take it off. But we would actually be able to save the same prosthetic, because it used to have a new one every single day, because it used to rip, obviously, as it came off.
Yeah.
But we actually managed to get some of it off altogether, which actually saved time the following day, because it would already have the paint on it. So sometimes it would take less, sometimes it would take more. It just depended on how patient we were being at the time. Brilliant.
I see a Shireen back there. Did it take you 2 hours to put your makeup on? No. So, noch welche Fragen?
Hi. From a mother's perspective, I often ask myself, how old have you been when you saw this whole series and this whole thing?
It's
because
it's strange. So obviously it was hard, because there was an element of it where I needed to know what was going on in order to do interviews and press stuff and all of that. But at the same time, I couldn't actually watch what was going on. So what my stepdad did is he actually took the episodes, took out all of the bad stuff, and made a PG version of Game of Thrones for me. But obviously that meant that I had no idea what was going on, because every other scene was inappropriate. So he kind of did that for us, which was obviously very nice of him. But I'd say probably, I think if I wasn't in it, it wouldn't have been something that I would have watched until I was probably maybe 17 or 18. But I probably ended up watching it maybe when I was about 15. So obviously it wasn't ideal, but, by that time, I think it was time that, I was older. I understood, that the show was what it was, and I needed to know what was going on in order to be able to, do all of the press stuff and that. But I would probably say that still to this day, I've never been able to watch it all in one go, because when I started to be able to watch it, the new season would come out, and I would have to watch that one to be able to answer questions about that one at interviews. So I've probably, a little bit like how is it Star Wars, that each film came out different years, but obviously that's not the way you should watch it. That's kind of how I've seen Game of Thrones. I've never actually sat down and watched it, but now that I think it's been quite a few years, I think I'm ready to sit down at some point and watch it in a leisure sense of actually watching it properly. So to this day, I don't think I've seen every single episode, but I could tell you what happens in every single season. So it's kind of like, do I want to sit down and watch it because I know what happens? Because it won't be it won't be surprising.
You won't have
I
the
don't
shock
know.
value.
But yeah, so I have seen it, but I've never watched it properly.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah.
Do you like more to work for television or for theaters, or what do you prefer?
Theatre will always have a place in my heart, but I think I did theatre as a kid, and I never was trained in theatre. The reason I did theatre as a kid is because I had that sort of raw, childlike feel, and obviously it was a bit different. Now that I'm an adult, I'm not musical theatre trained, and I've never had the training for it. So actually, there are people out there that are way better suited to that kind of, that kind of thing. But by all means, I would be more than happy to do theatre if it came my way. But I think TV and film is definitely the way that I want to go down, because I think that, getting to do, different things, there's something different every single day, a different scene every single day, every season's different, that kind of thing. I think theatre can be quite repetitive as well, but that's not to say that if someone said to me, do you want to do this show tomorrow, I wouldn't be going there first thing. But TV and film's more my style, I think.
Thank you. Noch welche Fragen? Ja, doch. Wieder? Ja, hier vorne. Noch eins, ja. Deswegen sind wir da.
Hi again. So my question is, what was your favorite part playing in Game of Thrones?
As in favorite to film, or favorite scene to watch?
You can both. Your favorite scene and yeah.
Well, I don't really have a favorite scene off the top of my head. I would say a favorite scene would probably, as in from my perspective, would probably be, any of the scenes that she has with Davos. Just because also Liam Cunningham is one of the nicest people that you will ever meet. He's also just so down to earth, and he makes work fun as well, So I'd probably say any of those to watch and also to film is any of the scenes with Liam. I think I really enjoyed filming. There was the scene where I actually get to film with more people, because I was obviously in a room for the most part, and then at the end of season 4, she makes it to the wall. And that was really fun to film, even though I didn't do too much. It was just a shot of me standing there. But that was the first time I'd ever seen the sets properly, because I'd always been in the studio where the insides were filmed and stuff like that, but I'd never been to the outside sets before. So that, for me, filming that was a whole different world, and it was so exciting, because I remember walking in and being like, oh, there's horses and people, and there's more, and everything's going on, and it was just a bit more chaotic, but so that was definitely one of my favourites to film, was when we got to the end of season 4, and I actually got to see what everyone else got to do all the time, which was really fun.
Thank you.
Okay. If you could play any role, doesn't have to be Game of Thrones, can be any fandom, what would it be?
There's not really a specific role that I can think of, but I would absolutely love to do, I was saying it yesterday actually, I'd love to do a sitcom of some sort, because I think I've done the serious stuff, I've done the comedy stuff, but I've never done the, comedy sitcom kind of part of it. It's a very different type of comedy, and I love watching sitcoms as they are, so I think doing something like that would be really, really fun. So yeah, we'll see what happens, but yeah, that's probably that would be something really cool that I'd like to try. Or anything with, because I didn't get to use swords, anything with sword fighting, I'd love to be able to do something a bit more, stunt-wise, because even though Game of Thrones is full of it, Shireen didn't really get to do too much of that side of it, so I think I'd like to be able to get to do stuff with a bit more like stunts and maybe like green screen, and CGI, when they have all the CGI dots on the face and you do sort of live action, anything like that, I think that would be really cool.
Thank you. Would you rather do like a typically British comedy or like an American sitcom? Because the two are very distinct, I feel.
Yeah, they are very different. I don't know. I really couldn't choose. I think I'd enjoy doing either, because I think I'd probably find doing a British comedy funnier, just because obviously it would be my kind of sense of humour. Sometimes with American sense of humour, I think the Brits, we find it sometimes a bit too cheesy, but that doesn't mean to say it wouldn't be fun to actually do that side of it. And also American sitcoms tend to be filmed in LA in like the big, Warner Brothers studios and things like that. So I think the experience of that would be incredible. But I think I'd probably have more of a laugh doing the British one, because it would be more my sense of humour. But we don't really have too many British sitcoms. Sitcoms tend to be more of an American thing, I think. So I don't know, both.
So let's flip this around, because the example I'm thinking of is The Office, obviously. There's the British Office and then the American Office, which ran, I think, how many seasons longer, I don't know. And that's quite a common thing, I think, with British series get taken to America, and they tried to do it with Red Dwarf, which was really weird. Game shows also go from Britain to US, like Idol and all that other stuff. What would be, an American sitcom that has had its run that you would like to do as a British comedy?
Oh, good question. Do you know what I think would be really funny? Friends. I think if you got a good writer on a British version of Friends, it would be really funny, because, they sit there and they pretend like they all sit for having coffee before they go to work. That doesn't happen. No one sits together in an apartment and has coffee together before they go to work, Get something like that where everyone's trying to get the tube in London at 6 o'clock in the morning, because I can promise you it's not that much fun. I think if you were to do something like Friends in like a British version of Friends, you'd have to do it. You'd have to get a really good person to do it. Otherwise, you'd botch it or you'd get it wrong. But I think if you did it right, that would be really that would come across really well.
I could see that. Yeah, I could see that.
Or even maybe like Brooklyn Nine-Nine or something like that. If they did a British version, could you imagine like a British copper, outside Buckingham Palace instead of being in America? I think that would be funny if it was British as well.
That would be a good one. Noch irgendwelche Fragen? Wir haben Zeit für eine Frage mehr. One more question. Okay, then we're gonna. Oh, was there somebody put their hand up in the back? Yep,
yeah,
go ahead.
Someone put their hand up there.
I know it's a classic question, but what is your opinion about season 8?
Yeah, I do get this question quite a lot. I think you have a different opinion when you're in the show versus when you're a fan, because obviously, from our perspective, you know, I think we think about it in a way that it started with the Starks and it ended with the Starks, you know, and I think that, you know, in terms of that, you know, I think there's very different opinions. Because I've not really seen the show as a fan, I guess I wasn't expecting any disappointment or anything. You know, I thought, that's nice, it starts with the Starks, it ends with the Starks, you know, but I can see from obviously a fan perspective why people, you know, were quite disappointed with the way that the show ended. So I don't really have a personal opinion on it, but because I kind of see it from both senses. I think because I've not sat down and watched it as a fan, I don't really have the proper opinion to give. But I know that there are people in the show, you know, like Ian Beattie, that are big fans of the show, that always have been, that, you know, they do have the same feeling as some of you guys that were disappointed about it. And, you know, so I don't really have an opinion on it. Overall, I personally think that it was a good ending. But, you know, again, I'm not the person to properly ask because I've not seen it as a fan, if you know what I mean. So technically, yeah, I thought it was all right, but I can see why you'd probably hate me for that answer.
The Lannisters are not impressed with all this talk of the Starks.
One last question. So one last question, maybe. What's your favorite house?
You're putting me on the spot here because I have to be true to. I'm meant to be true to my. I have to be true to my family, don't I? Otherwise, I mean, what are they going to do?
They betrayed you a lot. So.
I mean, they did. I mean, what are they going to do? Burn me? No, do you know what? Okay, if I'm not speaking as not a Baratheon, I'll say probably the Starks are my favourite house.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you.
Suck it, Lannisters! Woo! Kerry, thank you for taking the time to chat with us today.
No problem at all.
Enjoy the rest of your time here and have a safe trip home.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Kerry Ingram, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, dear.
I've made you sweaty as well.
I've sweated all over.